The cab rank was already moving when an American waved his hand sharply and climbed into the back seat like the decision had already been made for everyone. He hadn't even shut the door before he said, "All right, let's go. And don't take the scenic route. I don't have time for that." The driver glanced in the mirror. "Where to?" "I'll tell you," the American replied. "Just drive. You work for me." The driver's jaw tightened. "I drive when I have a destination." The American laughed. "Relax, you're just a driver. I pay, you move. That's how this works." The car rolled forward a few meters, then stopped at the curb. "I don't think you understand," the driver said calmly. "Oh, I understand perfectly," the American shot back. "This attitude gets people reported. You want that?" The driver nodded once. "Not particularly." "Then do your job," the American said, leaning forward, "and lose the tone." The driver turned fully in his seat. "My job doesn't include being spoken to like that." The American scoffed. "Don't be dramatic. You're not special." The driver smiled faintly. "Neither are you." He reached for the meter and pressed the button. The American frowned. "What are you doing?" "Ending the ride," the driver replied, "and logging the reason." "You can't just kick me out," the American snapped. "I can," the driver said evenly, opening his door, "and I have." People at the rank watched without interest. Another cab pulled in behind. The American looked around, waiting for someone to intervene. No one did. These are the rules people post. This is what it sounds like when someone breaks every one of them. The reading room stayed hushed until an American voice began narrating into a phone, confident enough to ignore the setting entirely. "Yeah, I'm rewriting this," he said loudly. "Our system back home actually teaches people to think." A student nearby looked up. "Could you keep it down?" "I'm working," he replied, not lowering his voice. "If you need silence, find another seat." "This is the silent area," she said. He waved her off. "Relax, I'll be quick." Pages stopped turning. The American continued dictating, pacing now. "Honestly, the way they do it here is outdated." "Please," the student said again, "you're shouting." "I'm explaining," he snapped. "There's a difference." The librarian appeared without sound and pressed a button beneath the desk. A soft light changed above the door. The American kept talking, then stopped, confused, as the librarian held out a card. "Your day access is revoked," she said quietly. "What?" "You'll need to leave." The librarian disabled his access, escorted him out calmly, and returned the room to silence without addressing his opinions. "So now talking is a crime here?" he muttered, pulling his jacket tighter. Rain tapped the windows as the door closed behind him. Inside, reading resumed immediately. This one gets ignored more often than people realize. The fire crackled steadily when an American pushed closer to a loose circle of locals at the Glastonbury campsite, voice already louder than the guitars nearby. "You call this a festival?" he said, gesturing around. "Back home, ours are bigger, louder, actually organized." A man poking the fire shrugged. "We're all right with this." "That's because you've never seen the real thing," the American pressed. "Better stages, better crowds, no comparison." A woman smiled politely. "We're here to listen, not compare." He leaned in. "Come on, admit it, this doesn't compete." Someone strummed a chord. Another joined with a harmony. "I'm talking to you," the American snapped. A third voice said lightly, "We heard you." The singing grew, unhurried and warm, the circle turning inward. "You're ignoring me," he said, louder. A nearby steward approached. "Sir, keep it respectful." "They started it," the American said, pointing. The steward shook his head. "You're disrupting." The locals began a sing-along, closed the circle, and his boasting vanished beneath voices that didn't need to answer him. "This is unbelievable. I was just telling the truth," he muttered, looking back. Security arrived moments later, guiding him away as the chorus carried on. This one usually comes wrapped as helpful, but never sounds that way. The crowd pressed close at Borough Market when an American leaned across a produce stall, lifting a tomato like evidence. "These are tiny," he said. "Where I'm from, you get real size for your money." The vendor smiled politely. "They're in season." "That's not the point," the American replied, louder. "Bigger is better. You should price them accordingly." "They're priced fairly," the vendor said. The American scoffed. "And I'm not tipping either. You don't need that here, right? So give me a discount." A woman beside him raised an eyebrow. Sir, the vendor said evenly, this isn't a negotiation. It is when customers speak up, the American pressed. I'm helping you. You're delaying the line, the vendor replied, reaching for a bag. Great, the American said, so we agree on less. Instead, the vendor turned to the next customer. For you, he said, handing over the bag, on the house, local loyalty. The woman blinked. Are you sure? He nodded. Always. The vendor completed the free sale, reset the scale, and returned to work without acknowledging the man still standing there. So I get nothing after all that? He muttered, glancing around for support. The American stared at the empty counter, words queued with nowhere to land. This rule doesn't need reminding. It enforces itself. The queue barely moved at passport control when an American stepped out of line, impatience already written into his posture. He leaned toward the border officer and spoke over the low hum of the terminal. I just need a quick stamp. This doesn't require waiting behind all these people. The officer looked up calmly. You'll need to rejoin the queue, sir. The American laughed, short and dismissive. That's inefficient. I'm not asking for a favor. I'm asking you to be practical. I'm asking you to wait, the officer replied. He leaned closer. You're choosing rules over service right now. That's a bad look. A traveler behind him shifted. The American turned. Relax, this will take seconds. Before anyone answered, a security officer stepped in quietly. Sir, you need to return to your place. I was already being processed, the American snapped. You can see that. The officer nodded. You stepped out of line. That shouldn't erase my spot, the American said sharply. Use common sense. The officer met his eyes. Common sense is respecting the queue. The American tried to speak again, but the officer raised a hand, calm and final. You'll need to start from the end, he said, or leave the area. The officer guided him aside, closed the gap behind him, and the line resumed as if he had never existed there. You're really doing this over nothing, he muttered, forcing a laugh that didn't land. The American stood rigid, watching strangers move forward without acknowledging him. This one isn't misunderstood, it's just misjudged. The cafe was already busy when an American voice cut through the steam and clatter, louder than it needed to be, sharper than anyone expected. He leaned over the counter and frowned at the barista. Say that again, he said slowly. Your accent's all over the place. Speak properly. The barista paused. I asked if you'd like milk. The American laughed. No, you mumbled. Clear English. It's not complicated. A few heads turned. I understood you, the barista replied evenly. That's the problem, the American said, tapping the counter. You think being understood is the same as sounding right. Back home, we don't lower standards like this. The barista nodded once and reached for a small notepad. He wrote carefully, tearing the page free. Cappuccino, regular milk, no sugar. He slid it forward. Please confirm. The American stared. Oh, come on, don't play games. I'm not, the barista said. You asked for clarity. The American scoffed. This is ridiculous. Just say it out loud like a normal person. The barista didn't respond. He took the next customer's order, silently, using the same notepad. Then the next. Cups moved, the line shortened, minutes passed. Hey, the American snapped. I was first. The barista finally looked up. You're waiting for verbal service, he said calmly. We're no longer using that with you. That's not how cafes work, the American said, forcing a laugh. The barista replied, quiet and flat. It is when someone decides voices aren't good enough. The American muttered, this is insane, man, then stood there frozen, watching others get served around him. The hallway smelled faintly of detergent when an American stopped short, staring at a cleaner pushing her cart toward the lift. Hey, he said sharply, pointing back at his door. That room wasn't done properly. Go redo it. The cleaner paused. I followed the checklist. Well, your checklist's wrong, he replied, stepping closer. I want it done again and do it right this time. I've already finished, she said calmly. He scoffed. Then you finished badly. Don't argue, just fix it. A guest passing slowed. Sir, the cleaner said quietly, please speak to reception. I'm speaking to you, the American snapped. You work here. Act like it. She looked past him and tapped her radio. A supervisor arrived within minutes. What's the issue? She doesn't know how to clean, the American said. Redo the room. The supervisor listened, then nodded. All right. Good, the American said. About time. The supervisor turned to the cleaner. Take the room out of service. The American blinked. What? We want to sign it, the supervisor replied evenly. Another team will inspect later. The supervisor removed the room from service, logged the interaction, and redirected the cleaner without further discussion. So now I don't even get my room, he muttered, staring at the sign. The American stood there, realizing his door would stay closed to him tonight. The weights clanged steadily when an American leaned against the rack at the local gym, watching a trainer coach someone through slow, controlled lifts. That's it, he said loudly. You Brits are so weak. No intensity, no real work. The trainer glanced over. This program focuses on form. Form doesn't build strength, the American replied, smirking. Back home, we actually train. A couple of members looked up. You're welcome to follow your own routine, the trainer said calmly. I am, the American shot back. I'm just surprised you're paid to teach this. The trainer stayed even. If you have feedback, speak to reception. Oh, I will, the American said, louder now. Someone this out of shape shouldn't be coaching anyone. The room went quiet. A staff member appeared beside them. Is there a problem? He's embarrassing the gym, the American said. And I'm being honest. The staff member nodded. Thank you. They walked a few steps away. Voices stayed low. No scene followed. Reception canceled the membership quietly, logged the complaint, and allowed training to continue without interruption. So that's it? I'm out for speaking my mind? He muttered, incredulous. The American checked his app, then the desk, then the faces around him, none of which changed. The beach was already packed when an American voice started slicing through the wind, sharp enough to turn heads even over the goals. He stood too close to the ice cream cart, pointing at the menu. That price is a joke, he said loudly. You're ripping people off. The vendor wiped his hands. Those are the prices. The American snorted. Don't play dumb. Knock it down. I'm not paying tourist rates. You're buying ice cream, the vendor replied. And you're just selling it, the American shot back. Drop it or I'll tell everyone here this place is a scam. A few sunbathers looked over. No one said a word. You hear me? The American pressed, louder now. I'll walk this beach and make sure nobody buys from you. The vendor nodded slowly. All right. The American smiled. Good. Thought so. Instead, the vendor reached under the cart and folded the sign. He shut the freezer lid, unhooked the umbrella, and began packing without hurry. What are you doing? The American demanded. Moving, the vendor said calmly. You can't just leave, the American barked. I'm a customer. The vendor lifted the handles. Not anymore. As the cart rolled away, someone clapped, then another. A ripple of cheers followed. Short, satisfied. Towels shifted back into place. Conversations resumed. The vendor disappeared down the sand without looking back. The American stood alone, mouth half open, trying to speak over applause that had already ended. This is what it looks like when someone announces movement instead of earning space. The platform was crowded when an American suddenly announced himself from behind, voice raised like space should rearrange on command. Coming through, he said loudly, waving one arm even though no one was near him. No one moved. A man beside me glanced back. There's nowhere to go. The American frowned. People usually step aside when someone's moving. You're not moving, the man replied evenly. You're standing. The American scoffed. That's the problem. No awareness. A woman ahead turned slightly. We're all waiting for the same train. The American gestured around. I'm just trying to get ahead. A station attendant stepped closer. Sir, remain behind the line. For what? The American snapped. I said excuse me. The attendant nodded. You weren't blocked. The American opened his mouth again, then stopped when no one reacted. Unreal. People here take everything way too personally, he muttered, folding his arms. The crowd stayed still, eyes forward, bodies unmoved. The attendant repositioned him quietly, restored the spacing, and the platform returned to silence without discussion. The train arrived, doors opened, boarding began normally. The circle was already full when an American voice cut through the music in Covent Garden, sharp enough to snap the rhythm in half. You're blocking the path, he called out, stepping forward. This isn't a stage. Pack it up. The busker kept playing for a beat, then smiled. Evening to you too. I'm serious, the American said loudly. People are trying to walk. This is selfish. A few heads turned. You're welcome to walk around, the performer replied calmly. That's not the point, the American shot back. You don't get to hijack public space. The busker lowered his instrument slightly. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, gesturing, apparently we're holding up global foot traffic. Laughter rippled. The American scowled. I'm not joking. Shut it down. Oh, I won't, the performer replied easily. But thank you for volunteering. He strummed again, weaving the words into rhythm. Blocking the path, ruining the day. Efficiency matters, that's what they say. The crowd laughed louder. Phones came out. That's not what I meant, the American snapped. You're twisting this. The busker nodded. That's what performance is. The performer leaned into the moment, finished the verse, and the crowd applauded while closing ranks around the circle without him. The American looked around, realizing every smile was aimed past him, not at him. The higher queue stretched along the railings when an American stepped forward at the Oxford bike station, voice already tight with impatience. I need a bike now, he said to the attendant. I'm on a schedule. The attendant nodded. There's a line. That's not efficient, the American replied, waving toward waiting families. Time is money. Serve me and keep things moving. We serve in order, the attendant said evenly. The American leaned closer. You're telling me children come before paying adults? Everyone pays, the attendant answered. Everyone waits. A father behind him shifted. We've been here a while. The American turned. Relax, this will take 2 minutes. The attendant lifted a helmet. 2 minutes still happen after the line. The American scoffed. You're choosing principle over productivity. I'm choosing fairness, the attendant replied, already turning to the next person. One by one, bikes were rolled forward. Bells rang, locks clicked. Are you kidding me? The American pressed. I asked first. You interrupted first, the attendant said calmly, handing a bike to a child. The American's jaw tightened. This is bad service. The attendant didn't look up. This is the service. The attendant kept serving patiently, handed out the final bike, and locked the stand without acknowledging him again. So I just lose out because I spoke up, he muttered, incredulous. The American stood there staring at empty hooks, recalculating a plan that had nowhere to go. The bell above the door rang late when an American pushed into the Devon tea room, scanning tables like one of them owed him something. I had a reservation, he said sharply to the hostess. You're holding my table. She checked the book. You were booked for 20 minutes ago. That's irrelevant. I'm here now. Move whoever's sitting there. We don't do that, she said calmly. The American scoffed. You absolutely do. I planned my day around this. A couple waiting nearby glanced over. So what? He pressed. You just give my table away? Yes, the hostess replied. That's how reservations work. That's terrible service, he said, leaning in. Fix it. She smiled once. Please wait here. Instead of turning back to him, she waved 2 walk-ins forward. Table for 2? She asked brightly. The American stiffened. Are you serious right now? She seated them at the window table he'd been eyeing. Moments later, a plate of warm scones arrived, on the house. The American laughed sharply. You're rewarding them? They arrived on time, the hostess replied evenly. Minutes passed. Tea was poured. Laughter settled in. I'm still waiting, the American snapped. She nodded. Yes. And you may continue, she said, already turning away. She seated walk-ins, served complimentary scones, and left him standing as the room quietly moved on without urgency or apology. This is unbelievable. I should have been first, he muttered, voice thinning with disbelief. He hovered near the door, checking his phone, watching servers pass without acknowledging him. The narrow aisles were already full when an American began forcing his way through the Glasgow bookshop, palms sliding books aside as if the shelves were in his way. You need to organize this better, he said to the owner. People can't even move. The owner looked up. People seem to be managing. Well, I'm not, the American replied, louder. This layout is bad. Make space. It's arranged intentionally, the owner said calmly. That's a mistake, the American snapped. You should listen when someone tells you how business works. A woman browsing nearby paused. I like it like this, she said quietly. The American waved her off. I'm talking to the owner. The owner nodded once. And I'm done being talked at. He stepped closer, voice still even. You're disrupting customers. Please step outside. You can't just kick people out for feedback, the American scoffed. I can, the owner replied, and I am. What if I don't? Then everyone waits while you argue, the owner said, glancing around, and nobody wants that. The room stayed still. Browsers kept reading. No one defended him. So now I'm the problem for saying something? He muttered, shaking his head. The owner returned to the counter. Customers resumed browsing, and the shop absorbed the moment without reacting further. After a moment too long, the American backed toward the door, still talking, still unheard. The shop was quiet until an American voice rose near the counter, cutting through folded denim and soft music. He looked at the cashier and said loudly, "You could smile more. That attitude's not helping." She blinked. "I'm just rigging you up." "No," he replied, tapping the counter. "You're being cold. Fix it. Customers notice these things." "I'm fine," she said evenly. He laughed. "If this is fine, I'd hate to see bad." A couple browsing slowed. "Sir," the cashier said, still calm, "please don't speak to me like that." "Don't be sensitive," the American snapped. "I'm giving feedback." A manager stepped beside her. "What seems to be the issue?" "She needs an attitude adjustment," the American said, gesturing. "I'm not paying to be treated like this." The manager didn't raise his voice. "We won't complete the sale." The American scoffed. "Excuse me?" "We support our staff," the manager replied. "You're free to leave." "You're choosing her over business?" "Yes," the manager said simply. "Every time." The manager set the items aside, ended the transaction, and the queue behind quietly closed without offering him another opening. "So now honesty gets you kicked out?" he muttered, forcing a laugh. The cashier resumed work. Shoppers returned to browsing as if the moment had already passed. The group had barely stopped when an American stepped forward on the walking tour, cutting across the guide's sentence with an impatient wave. "That's not right," he said loudly. "You're leaving things out. Honestly, you sound uninformed." The guide paused, hands still folded around his notes. "Which part?" "All of it," the American replied. "I've read about this. You're oversimplifying." A few people exchanged looks. "All right," the guide said calmly. "What would you add?" The American smiled, sensing an opening. "Well, for starters—" "Please," the guide said, handing him the microphone. "Tell us." The American hesitated. "I mean, historically speaking." A woman in the group checked her phone. Another man raised an eyebrow. "Go on," the guide said, stepping aside. "We'll wait." The American cleared his throat. "It's complicated," someone murmured. "That's usually the point." The guide nodded. "If you have sources, we can check them." The American glanced around, searching faces. "I don't have them memorized." "That's fine," the guide replied. "We do." He gestured to the group. Phones came out. Pages loaded. Quiet confirmations followed. "Shall we continue?" the guide asked. No one objected. The guide resumed calmly, invited the group to verify each claim live, and the interruption dissolved without resistance or rescue. "All right, whatever, let's just move on," he muttered, folding his arms tightly. The American stepped back into the crowd, suddenly careful not to meet anyone's eyes. The waiting area was already tense when an American stepped up to the gate desk at Gatwick, voice carrying like the room owed him attention. "I need priority boarding," he said, flashing his phone. "I'm a VIP traveler." The agent glanced at the screen. "Boarding will be announced shortly." "That's not good enough," the American replied, leaning in. "I don't stand around with everyone else." "You'll board with your group," she said evenly. He smirked. "Or you can do this the easy way and call me first." Passengers nearby went quiet. "I paid more," the American added. "That buys priority." "It buys your seat," the agent replied. "So you're refusing service?" he pressed. "No," she said calmly. "I'm following procedure." The American folded his arms. "Fine, I'll wait right here." The agent nodded, stepped back, and didn't argue again. Minutes passed. Then the microphone clicked on. "Now boarding groups C through F," she announced, voice clear and unhurried. People stood, bags rolled forward. The American frowned. "What about priority?" She met his eyes. "You asked to be first," she said quietly. "You'll be last." She delayed his call, boarded everyone else calmly, and closed the lane while the room emptied around him. "You've got to be kidding me. This is unreal," he muttered, scanning the empty gate. The American watched the final passengers disappear down the jet bridge, jaw set, grip tightening on his phone. None of this is about shouting or judging. It's about how everyday habits ripple outward when people stop noticing others. If you like stories that notice the small things, stay with us, subscribe, and we'll keep sharing them.